78-year-old is accused of misusing public funds during his time as mayor of the capital from 1995 to 2007. However, proceedings have already been delayed by an appeal from a co-defendant. A judge is due to make a ruling on Tuesday, which could see the trial postponed for months. Tim Friend has more on the story.
In typical style, Jacques Chirac always insisted that he wanted to be treated like any other person facing trial. But that's unlikely to happen. The 78-year-old, one of France's longest-serving presidents, seems to grow in popularity with the French public, who view him with a particular fondness, the envy of other politicians. This is despite the fact that he's the first former head of state to face criminal charges since the Fifth Republic was founded half a century ago.
He is a man who sort of does the right thing at critical times. I mean, we've seen it politically at other times, like saying that France should not be involved in Iraq. We've seen it at times where he stood up for the rights of Parliament. And we saw it, of course, that he was very unequivocally against the Front National. And, that he stands as a statesman for that, I think, whatever his other faults.
He's now in fragile health. His wife, Bernadette, dismissed reports that he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease, but he may find a court appearance arduous. The abuse of public funds charges spring from his time as mayor of Paris and salaries paid to so-called phantom employees at the town hall. The money was used as part of Chirac's drive for further power in the 1990s, at the end of his 18-year term as mayor.
Well, he finished his term as mayor of Paris in 1995, and after that he won 2 presidential elections in 1995 and in 2002. Now, the French public was very much aware of these very serious allegations against him of corruption, but it's a cultural problem in France. I think the French press is not strong enough. It didn't do a good job of holding him accountable.
A civil action is being settled by repayment of funds. Mr. Chirac lost his legal immunity against criminal charges after he retired. If found guilty, he could face a heavy fine and up to 10 years in prison. But in practice, he would be more likely to receive a small suspended sentence. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera.
And that's the latest from Europe. Let's go back to Doha.
Now, Shia Muslims have been pushing for more rights in Bahrain in protests directed at the Sunni royal family. In their latest demonstration, around 200 Shia protesters have been rallying outside the US embassy, calling on Washington to stop backing the monarchy. Protesters have been camping at Manama's Pearl roundabout since last month, but their stand has won them only minor concessions. Zainab Al-Khawaja is a protest organizer in Manama. She says protesters want the US to stop supporting the Bahraini government.
We want America not to get involved. We can overthrow this regime. We can. The people of Bahrain is strong, just like the people of Egypt. All we want is for America not to support the dictatorship in Bahrain, because people here, they're going to have to sacrifice so much more if the Americans decide to support the regime.
In Oman, the ruler Sultan Qaboos has ordered a major cabinet reshuffle after weeks of anti-government protests there. State TV is reporting that the Sultan named several new ministers in key posts, including the person who oversees the economy. The move appears to be the latest of a string of concessions aimed at appeasing ongoing protests as people demand more jobs and political reforms. US Defense Secretary Robert Gates has repeated Washington's apology for the mistaken killing of 9 Afghan boys in a NATO airstrike last week. Gates described the deaths as a setback after arriving in Afghanistan for talks. The visit comes as US troops prepare to begin a phased withdrawal in July. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has announced a timetable for the gradual handover of security responsibility. Well, international forces have made progress in securing some areas of Afghanistan and in training Afghan forces to take over long-term security. But as Sue Turton discovered, many civilians in Kandahar province are still living in fear of the Taliban.
Driving down Highway 1 in what many Americans call the heart of darkness. The Taliban was born in the district of Jirai, west of Kandahar city. It's here that some of those extra 30,000 US troops were sent to stop its momentum.
When we moved into this area, it was completely under Taliban control.
When the 1st Squadron 75th Cavalry Regiment arrived here last summer, the whole area south of Fob Wilson was Taliban territory. But over the winter, they've made the major roads more secure and set up small outposts dotted across this hostile terrain, including Pashmel south and Sabligay to the southeast.
You have to set a permanent presence to show that the people that you're going to stay, because the people here are still fence-sitting.
And out on patrol from the Sabligay outpost, people are clearly nervous about speaking out.
Is there anything else you would like to tell me about the Taliban?
Don't ask us these kinds of questions. It will bring trouble for us in the future. We cannot be against you. We cannot be against the Taliban. You make trouble for me in the future.
If we talk about Taliban, they'll cut our hair and slit our throats.
Well, that's why US soldiers and Afghan soldiers are here. We're trying to protect you from the Taliban.
You leave now, you go back to your base, and then they come.
In this area, there are Taliban. You're in this village, they're in that village. You go to that village, they go to the next one.
At Pashmel South the next day, a Taliban attack on a patrol just 500 metres from the base. Air support is called in. The Afghan soldiers think they've seen the fighter, but he disappears into the undergrowth.
After yesterday's attack, this patrol has now been set up less than 200 metres outside of the base, because that's how close the Taliban are now getting. But that's a success on how it was just a few months ago, when they couldn't even stick their heads outside of the gate without drawing gunfire.
But our gains they're not reversible. You know, this is going to be another summer or two that's going to determine what our true success is here.
Success to him means holding on to these gains. To the local people, it's about backing the winning side, and they're not sure yet who that will be. Sue Turton, Al Jazeera, Kandahar.
In Côte d'Ivoire, gangs of youths and uniformed police have looted at least 10 homes belonging to politicians allied to the presidential contender Alassane Ouattara. UN peacekeepers have been unable to control the chaos in Abidjan as roadblocks have been set up by government supporters to stop them. Meanwhile, in the west of the country, rebels claim they've captured the town of Tulipler, but government forces deny this. Still coming up in the programme, we'll have all the latest sports news, including a safe pair of hands. Find out just how many security guards it takes to protect the England cricket team.
Business Latest is brought to you by Catalum, the most efficient and environmentally friendly aluminium smelter.